I have to say I love this guy more than data, just so that's clear.
I have to combine my physical shape and what I can do in training with his data and his knowledge, and sort of combine those two, and then it will be creating something quite great in the middle.
Welcome to Mindset Win, Kristian Blummenfelt and Olav Bu, two absolute legends in two very different ways, which we're about to explore in today's conversation. How are you doing, guys? We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us. We are doing well, almost by the end of our training camp here up in Sierra Nevada. So yeah, training has been good, winter has been good, and it's soon time to kick off the 2024 season.
Life is hard, as it should be.
And I heard we caught you on a rest day today. What does a rest day of a triathlete looks like, Kristian?
Yeah, so we typically have rest day now Monday and Fridays, where we have like 2 sessions. So it's normally like today I did the 5.5K swim and like an hour easy run. So less training, but that's also the typical days where we're doing more sort of stuff like this, more content, more podcasts and more meetings. So suddenly like the rest day tends to also be a little bit busier than just like laying in the bed and watching Netflix.
I mean, it's funny to see you guys together. It took we had 5 minutes together so far, and it already shows how well you guys know each other, how close you must be. And I am very eager to learn more about your connection, your relationship. Maybe we can start this one out with each of you describing the other person in the 3 best words that you can come up with.
One of the reasons why we're able to work so well together is also because we are very like-minded. Like we have very much the same mentality in terms of being able to set goals and be dedicated towards it, and sort of block everything that's not necessarily which is like non-important, and just like targeting what we have really like the biggest goal we're setting. So that's maybe one of them. And then you have to sort of put on crazy. Like it's very few people who is so extreme into everything they're doing as he is. Like he's sort of having 7 life inside him of what they've done in the past. And typically, like when you're working with a coach, he's been like maybe an athlete in his past and then turning into a coach. But he's having like 7 life experience within him, like building different companies, doing different extreme sports, doing scuba diving, having the license for flying, glider planes, and yeah, it's sort of like so many histories behind as well, which is very extreme. And also a very good person to be around in terms of like he's teaching both me and Gustav a lot, not just in training and about sport, but also like about life in general.
Those were good ones. And I especially liked, Olav, how you did not, move at all, as Kristian said, crazy. What you got for Kristian?
It is pretty much a mirror. What I really enjoy with Kristian is that for me, I view us not like there is like one guy above the other, or there's a coach and there is an athlete below. For me, I continuously learn from Kristian as well. There are many things that I develop, and there are many things that we try to measure and so on. But the conversations, the ideas, and also where I'm deep into something and I'm sharing it with Kristian, whether it's good or bad, it is probably Kristian is one of the guys where I know that that he can come back also with reflections later on, because he's been reflecting and even actually maybe spending his rest day starting to read onto something or dig into something as well, because it also it catches his interest. But of course we can't forget that the reason for why we are here is obviously because of performance and this what I'm not sure how to describe, but this extreme dedication and belief in the ability to perform. And for me, it's equally important to have that belief in everything that I do, and believe that I can do, that I demonstrate and do, like really push the limits for everything I do in the same way that he does in racing and training as well. And I think that energy and that dedication to what we do is combined with a common goal. It's something that is. I struggle with finding another arena where it would be possible to learn as quickly and as much and detailed about, or let's say, everything without an athlete like Kristian. I don't say this to be nice to Kristian, but I have yet to meet a person with Kristian's mindset when it comes to performance and so on. And there are more in the making. That is also something that never ceases to amaze me.
I think that's also why we are sort of working so well together. Like it's been, you came sort of in the background first in 2016, 2017, and since 2017 you've been traveling quite a lot on training camps. And the fact that we have so many similarities in our sort of the way we are setting targets and working towards it, it's also maybe why it's like working so well.
Yeah.
That is so interesting, because I can imagine that's every athlete's dream, and on the other hand, every Olav's dream as well, to meet their perfect match, but it doesn't even, happen that often. How did you guys meet? You just mentioned 2016 was kind of the start of your relationship. Oh, you're already smiling. What was that like?
The first time I met him, we were up at a swimming pool, so we got help from Ørjan Madsen, who is now back helping us on the swim, a professor in endurance sport or swimming?
Exercise physiology.
Yeah, so he was coaching me and a group of other triathletes, and suddenly he brought this guy into the pool, a guy who were like, like a swimmer. We had like speedos on, and he came there with like long normal running shorts, and like you clearly saw that he was not a swimmer. And then I got to talk to him like a little bit like after the swim, and then he told me like about this project where he wanted to, he had wanted to. I misunderstood the project because I thought that he would...
you can say how you understood it. That's probably more funny.
I understood that he wanted to climb to Mount Everest with kites and fly down again. But it was like 3 different projects in one. So he wanted first to kite to the South Pole, then climb to Mount Everest, and then use like a balloon over North Pole, and then make like a homemade submarine to go to the deepest... So that was and then back
stuff someone would do, and you're like, you're my coach.
and back then I just had like a weekend up at the mountains where I've been practicing not kiting but something similar, like ski sail, so like a smaller kite.
Ski sail, yeah.
So I sort of felt a little bit like connection there. Oh, you're doing like kiting as well, but I was nothing there, like kiting up to Mount Everest.
And probably you weren't building your own submarine either.
No, of course, I think that's why it's a little bit funny, because I saw that basically how he remembered it from that conversation there. It became, I could see how extreme this sounded. It is a little bit more, tame than that, but we leave it with that story. I think it's cool the way.
And then later on you came, start doing more and more testing. So you came in and helped me and Ari with doing like profile testing. So he came home to my basement, and we used like maybe an hour or 90 minutes to set up the trainer because I was missing some tools. And back then we did like a typical test that we're even doing now, but just like more simple version, like we're like doing a threshold test or step test. And he gave me like a shocking low threshold number. because back then, like I was all thinking like, of course I can do push more watts, like so I was always having like thinking I was having a higher threshold than I were having actually. So then I was always maybe training a little bit harder than what I was supposed to do in all my sessions. And the same was for my runs and for my swims. So in the beginning we got the numbers and we sort of thought that it can't be right. And then you came back again around Rio, did more testing, and it shows that actually my threshold isn't higher than 320 watts or something. And from there on, we sort of start taking more and more testing and adjusting our intensity control in the sessions.
So cutting it short, Olav, you are a hiking kiter who's also a submarine builder who's also testing stuff. That's how much I took away from this.
Yeah.
No, but all jokes aside,
I'll happy with that CV. You can keep that on my CV.
To add it in, last summer when we were in Forumö for training camps, then every time we were done with the main set on the swim, then he had to pack down and leave quickly as possible, because then he had a pilot briefing down at the airport to be plane gliding, or what do you call it? Yeah, plane gliding midday if the wind condition was better. So he has again, he has like 7 lives inside him, and I'm probably just heard of half of them.
and I can only hope that we're discovering or uncovering at least one today here. Maybe you can put into your words, though, what it is that you do, not in all the 7 lives, but maybe in only this one life that you're spending a lot of time off with Kristian.
I think the common project we really have now, because Kristian has won it all. He has taken all the records.
Yes.
I just saw there was an update to Guinness Book of Records, it's called, where basically now he's of course recognized there as the fastest time on the Ironman distance as well, that he did on his debut on Ironman even. But basically taking the Olympics, taking the World Championship short course racing, taking the record on Ironman, taking the 70.3 record, taking the 140 or Ironman record, winning Kona.
I didn't win in Kona.
No,
Sorry,
sorry, Gustav, sorry, St. George. But basically winning within 1 year. Also the Ironman World Championship, and then also winning the half Ironman World Championships. Like we have won absolutely everything, and you won everything on record time, including also of the sub 7, where you went 6 hours 45 minutes as well. So I think like going back, just doing everything one more time, it's a tough thing to motivate for. But I think one thing that we have learned so much together throughout these years, that we've become more and more aware of a project we have dubbed peak human performance, or finding peak human performance. And the reason for that is already because of some of the research we have done already now. We know that with all what is established as, let's say, call it as truth in science, we have already exceeded that, like not by margins, but so massively that it never stops to amaze me that we are always pushing the boundaries. We are always moving more outside, and it's more like every time we go in and we lift the bar, it's more like, Kristian, like the most common sense thing to do here, just looking at this, is to do this. But when it's gonna break, we really don't know, because we are already far beyond what is written in any, let's say, textbook. So we are basically writing the chapters as we move. And I think this peak human performance project is it is a truly an interesting journey to be a part of, together with Kristian, and exploring this and figuring out really what are the limits to performance. That is I think. I'm very fortunate to have a guy like this to work with, to be honest.
But I feel our motivation is a little bit different there. Like you can be, if you see a great number in a lab, it can give you quite a lot of joy. Like you can be smiling more than if I'm winning a big race. Well, for me, it's more like those cracking people, you know, like when you are in a battle against your biggest rival and you're sort of able to sort of, that like moment where sort of snapping the elastic band and feeling unstoppable. That's more what I am sort of driving towards than breaking records in the lab. But of course, like if you are able to break records in the lab, then you're most likely well prepared to do the others as well.
Yeah, I think we actually share that one. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is basically pace, or basically the time over a distance, or let's say the racing distance you're doing. But I think exactly for me, more those days is that where I know already so well Kristian, that I know whether this is gonna be that he's gonna bring out shattering, let's say, the time or records or competitors. That for me, basically, when you go over the finish line first, I know that basically my head is already thinking, okay, we need to improve this for the next race. I remember that for the Olympics, already within 15 minutes, I was thinking like, what do we need to do better for Paris? And then, but I think that also the other thing for me basically is that when the race is finished, this is basically when I lower my shoulders, or basically, okay, then now this is another chapter closed, but more where I also know how many people that are basically sacrificing so much as a part of, or let's say, the whole team we have built, and the effort that they put into it for us to be able to do what, or at least what I enjoy to do the most as well. And that is maybe more that comes into my realization. Like, we even hadn't actually planned how to celebrate your Tokyo Olympic gold. It was like, oh, we haven't bought any cakes or anything like this. That was not even on our mind. It was just performance. And then what do we improve to Paris?
But we did actually, so normally after a good training session, he's making hot chocolate with like vanilla.
Nice.
Like expensive. He's making it quite expensive with the vanilla, like real vanilla. But then in the Olympic Village, he couldn't make hot chocolate. But then he actually came to the table with cold chocolate to everyone. So we had a little celebration there at the dinner, I would say.
Nice. So some spill champagne, you guys drink hot chocolate. I really like that. But listening to you guys explaining what this whole endeavor really means to you is so interesting, because just doing a little bit of research, watching just a few of those YouTube videos you guys put out there, it seems so obvious, it seems so clear that you guys have like this higher purpose for yourself.
Peak human performance, finding peak human performance.
Right there, that's it. And then listening to you, Kristian, putting it into words, you just want the battle. You just have these so incredibly unique approaches for this sport. Like, how would you say, or if I'm digging here now, what is the base of all this? How did you develop this uniqueness?
I think it's it's a little bit like having an awareness of what I think I need to do in order to get where I want to be. And that's also like, I've always been given like some free space in terms of like how I'm adjusting my training. So I've had always like been able to have a saying in the training, and that's also made me more aware of what I have to do, and where like the fact that I think that at the moment I'm not race ready. I, for example, need 3 months of then build up and then do this block of preparation and then do the race. Then I'm trying to look forward to the time as well where I have to do the work on training camp. So I'm able to both enjoy the times when I'm really fit, and I'm able to enjoy the times where I'm maybe not as fit, but I'm sort of building as well, because then you're also seeing progress from day to day. So it's also important to find the joy in those days.
For me, where does it all come from? That is something that have changed actually for me. Since I was a kid, I always been very curious. I remember even my grandfather calling me a philosopher already before I started at primary school. At that time, I thought it was a bad thing to be a philosopher, but I actually today enjoy it pretty much, simply because some point when you are trying to break barriers and you can't read books anymore, you have to be able to sit down and philosophize and let's say take a helicopter view, or basically start even asking a little bit these meta questions around, why do I think this way? Why should this be a limitation? Is it really a limitation, and so on? But I think that are more the underlying some of the underlying mechanisms that are more like, let's say, call it the base of moving things forward. Always wanting to see whether we can take one more step, being curious, and not being afraid of making errors or failures. This is something we actually talk quite a bit about, that like if we really want to be competitive, we also have to have the mindset of the second best as well. Like, what would the second best guy trying to, if you want to beat yourself? So for Kristian, so for example, when we like, how would Kristian, if he were in second position, think like, or the same for me as well, if we were the underdogs, how would we think if we wanted to now outcompete ourselves?
And what would you say is the perfect balance here between the data that Olav loves so much, between the physical work that you do and the chemistry that comes in, and even the mental part that, you know, an Ironman and all those crazy races that you do require?
I have to say I love this guy more than data, just so that's clear.
I've learned one thing. I think that was one of the things I learned in the very beginning. I thought that the law of physics didn't count for me, and that a threshold, like I didn't need to have like a threshold value in my lactate. I can always tolerate the pain better, so I can be dealing with lactate more. But then when you're sort of understanding more about the data he's showing me and what we're doing in the lab and like doing more and more testing, and I'm understanding that actually I have to combine my sort of my physical shape and what I can do in training with his data and his knowledge, and sort of combine those two, and then it will be creating something quite great in the middle.
Do you guys even ever disagree? You seem so much like a happy family right there. So the chemistry seems to be working so far, but I can imagine to actually get to the top where it's windy, as you said, it takes tough conversations, it takes probably hard feedback, and I can imagine that there's sometimes kind of a dissonance between what the coach sees that the athlete doesn't, and then what the athlete feels that the coach can't feel.
I think it's often been like when we have had period where maybe the shape is going backwards and we maybe disagreeing on what we have done, why it's happening, and I might have a thing based on feeling what I reckon I should do. Well, you have more like your numbers and you think, no, this is how it looks like. But so if you do, I don't know, like if you lift up the intensity, then it's not going to help you with. So I think the last proper heated argument was maybe going into the St. George Ironman World Championship, where I reckon I had done way too little race-specific sessions, while he was confident, no, we have enough. We have had like 4 or 5 sessions with this amount of duration. I still reckon we should have done more, but like I ended up winning the race, even though. But then I felt I came like suddenly it was like 3 weeks until the race, and I felt the program that we've been following was leaking some of the session that I would have liked to have done leading up to this point. So then we can have some proper arguments. But then like the common goal when we sit down and talk like this is always to make my fitness, or like to make myself better, or self better.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think there will always be heated, like when you're really passionate about something, there will always be heated conversation at times. But I think also it's a little bit about, let's say, how you also, if you are trying to avoid heated discussions or you're afraid of that, then I think that's where the problems really start to arise, when you know there's a time for it. Because obviously sitting down, because I could also, of course, at that time there I could feel I also felt on it, because the only thing I want to do is to bring Kristian onto the starting line, knowing that basically he's best prepared in the world. But then, of course, when you start to see that, there were some sicknesses and other things going in there, your feelings a little bit for how the process was, you also know that this is not the time to sit down also to discuss, or let's say where I bring my opinions, and okay, I can basically say, okay, Kristian, this is what we did leading into Cozumel, this is what we are now. But of course, that's the data, that's just the data. In the end, also it's his feeling, because you can build the most amazing physiological machine if you want that, but if you don't believe in it when you are on the starting data, it doesn't matter. There will always be times when things are difficult, when things doesn't go on rails or tracks, and there will be disagreements or emotions, and you maybe don't know why you're feeling exactly like there's just something that you feel is wrong. And then being able to address this and sit down and feel that even though you're having a heated conversation, you can still come back afterwards and give each other a hug, or basically, or we have a little bit different ways to do that as well.
But the fact that like every time like we have the common goal, like it is to target the race or like winning the race, so we sort of agree with where we want to end. So it's maybe that's also why it's easier as well to have those conversations.
Yeah.
I really loved, yeah, how you just basically said we have these are my words now, this no ego culture, and we have the same goal that we want Kristian in his best possible shape at the starting line. And maybe that's actually something you can take myself and the listener to right now, to the starting line. What is it that you guys do in order, to prepare for a specific race? What are processes or routines that you always go through to, yeah, be in best possible shape?
It's sort of, it depends how big the race is, and then straight away when the course is getting released, you try to get a feeling of what the course is requiring, to get an idea of what's important, collecting wind data information and giving
current data from the river.
Yeah, so sort of getting an understanding of how the race potentially can pan out, and trying to see if there's been a race nearby or similar courses in the past with a high level field. Then we again look at what fitness we expect or we reckon I need to be in order to win. Like, how does my lactate curve need to look like in the lab in order to perform the best over an hour and 45 minutes. And then we try to select races that's going to be similar to that, and trying to make sure that I'm performing on what's important. Because you can have either a very fast one, or you can have like a very tough course, hilly course, where it's more like about being overall strong.
So interesting. And maybe if I could take it just one step further, let's say Ironman, 2 minutes to go. You're in your suit, you're ready to go. And I mean, it's this huge race, even for me, just thinking about it now. What does it feel like for you actually making these last steps there? How do you talk to yourself?
Before an Ironman, it's nerve-wracking, even as a pro, because even if you have your best day out there, which everyone is hoping for, it's going to be almost 8 hours of racing, and it's going to be, you will probably hit the wall with like 15, 20k left, and you still have to just run through on the run. So no matter how well you're pacing, you know that it's going to be a long day. And best case, you will hit the wall very late. If you're having an awful day, you will be running empty early, and you sort of have to just get yourself to the finish line afterwards. So you feel that on the field and the athletes around you, that it's not just a walk in the park. It's even for us, it's going to be brutal. And then you try to sort of suck in the energy, like it's typical dark before sunrise, or the start is just when the sun pops up. So it's sort of those, like, you feel like the nerves and the intensity, and that you have like a whole day ahead of you of racing. And then maybe like 30 seconds before the gun goes off, we get like we're able to like either swim towards like a line where we are starting, like in Kona, between two boys. And then you're sort of just like waiting there, like trying to not use too much energy before the start, because you want to save as much as possible, but also you want to have your switch on when the gun goes off, because you don't want to have a bad start on a long day. So it's sort of trying to enjoy the moment, but even though being a little bit afraid.
Which sounds, crazy. And Kristian, so we already learned that you're not only the numbers lover, you're a Kristian lover too. But, describing how you care about interpersonal relationships and the chemistry and the energy in the team makes me believe that there's like even maybe a little bit of a spiritual side to you as well. Do you come from that end to support Kristian as well? Because you can't measure that in numbers. You can't support someone with numbers in a situation like that. And as we learned as well, everyone on the team just wants Kristian to be in his best possible mindset as well. How do you guys get there?
I feel often when you're on race day, you feel you have done most of the things you can do.
Yeah.
Like the training and analyzing the build up and the program. Then it's more for you to sort of let me do my job almost.
Yeah. If you want to focus in just on the race day itself, then it is, we've already spent so much time together leading into the race that I have a very good feeling for where we are. But I think also at the same time that even if things like, for example, St. George, where things didn't go on rail, and Kristian were actually quite sick leading into the race there. I still feel that you were, and of course I would probably more sense a little bit more on Kristian at that time, and not like myself. I don't like, that's not important. That's not why I am there. But where I feel that actually you are quite good at coming to, let's say, agreement or content with the situation as well. So even if it's a horrible, or what to say, like a shit hits the fan, it's more like, okay, you get irritated or frustrated and so on, but then okay, you suck it up and okay, fine, focus on the goal and do the best out of the situation. And that's that is something that of course I really enjoy, and that makes it of course really easy to work with Kristian in that sense, because if the opposite would be, for example, you only stress out, like you spend so much energy on stressing out with everything that is wrong, all the things that you should have done that you can't do anything with more, then of course everything is about damage control and just trying to bring out those, like, let's say, and you don't know necessarily. For some athletes it would be rationalizing it, some athletes it would be, let's say, more helping them accept the situation, and so on, and some athletes, they just have to more or less go on the starting line feeling that the world is, they almost like they build themselves down, so that basically the race helps them build themselves up again a little bit during the race, because they are performing above their expectations. So but and there are, like, we are 8 million people on the globe, and we probably have a little bit of a variance to all kinds of different ways, but we have learned to believe in ourselves, and knowing that basically stressing out with everything we can't do anything with, that's more like, okay, write it down as a lesson learned and take it with us after the race into the next one. But now is the time to focus on what we can focus on. So for me, those days, the last week leading into the race, it's not about data anymore. It's not about the program anymore. It's basically about Kristian's comfort and what he feels that is needed to be done. And again, it's all, like, one have to remember that Kristian is we worked so long time together that Kristian actually is really, really good with data. It's like I'm confident that if he had enjoyed sitting at a school bench, he would easily be able to take a PhD in physiology if that was what he wanted to do. But some people find their passion in sports, some people find their passion in academia, and he finds his passion in sport, but with an extremely strong mind and ability to understand everything that is there. So it's not like I have to tell him that you should do maybe a little bit more like this. He will have a so good understanding for it that it's more making sure that he can focus on what is important for him, and then and take away all the stress that is around there. And hopefully we have set things up in such a good way that is, for me, the last days leading to the race, it's a breeze. And it's a breeze for Kristian. For Kristian, obviously, it should be a breeze. But if we have done our things right, it even is a breeze for me, because the teams and everything that is around, what has been delivered, everything is on tracks, and it's you just have that confidence, or yeah.
It's typically more like the 3 weeks leading into the race when if we're in Kona for the World Championship. The most feedback, or you're helping us with on top of the training program, it's maybe analyzing the course and looking at the data and giving us feedback on how the wind condition is going to be, and then we might be out in the course and getting like a sense of how it feels, and he can tell us, yeah, but the conditions next week will be actually better, and you will be probably going to go 4 minutes faster next week compared to what you did this day, and that's going to put you in 2 minutes ahead of what they did last year under the same conditions. So based on data like this, we can get a feeling of what's required on race day. So for example, before I did my first ever half Ironman distance, we looked at the bike split from the guy who won the year before, and we put it into like a best bike split, and he gave me like a power that I had to hold in order to be able to ride with this guy if he was riding at the same pace. And then we figured out like, okay, that's maybe a bit too optimistic back then. So then we took down the power with like 20 watts, and then he told me like, okay, but then you're going to be 2 minutes off the bike from the leader, most likely. And but then I'm probably going to be able to survive the run. And race day comes, I'm letting that guy get away or disappear in the front, and I'm coming off the bike 2 minutes behind him, and is just able to run him off at the finish line, or take him on the run. So based on the numbers that he can give me in advance, makes it easy for me to get confident for race day.
It's actually a little bit funny. Do you remember the system we built using even in St. George? Because
if the wind condition with something on the roof, and
So basically, obviously, a model is a model. And it's never better than what you feed it with. And obviously, I subscribe to, I don't know, like 5 different global weather models, more or less. So everything from the European Center of Medium Weather Forecast to the GFS model, or whatever is applicable to the location that where we are going to do the racing. But then on the side also, we know that weather is inherently difficult to predict. But this is the good thing where I can build also my own weather models, because as long as I go out with a weather station. So in St. George, I went to this hardware shop, and I bought some woods or some pieces of wood and everything attached to the roof of the car, and then I had already brought a wind instrument, a scientific wind instrument that I basically installed 1.5 meter on top of the car to collect everything from wind direction to wind velocities. And then I was driving around in the course, and already I had, of course, the weather model. So I had the weather model there, or these different weather models. And now, but at the same time, because you know that, okay, the weather model says that it should be this direction, this wind speed, this humidity, this pressure, this temperature now. But since I'm already collecting this from the station, I can already now start to say, well, there seems to be a delay in the weather data here, or there seems to be an offset in the weather data. So I need to correct for that. And now I can take all this feeding into and correct the models. And then basically you can start also to correct exactly on the outputs, because I know I have all his all the metabolic profiles on him. I have the aerodynamic profiles on him, and obviously we know also what kind of friction there are from the tires, from the chains, and everything. So then basically we can feed this into the model as well, and then start to look exactly on the things that he is. So you can imagine this is equally cool for me to be there. I could just like doing this kind of things, and you're looking into honing in the things, and then we see basically how well this also play out in reality as well, which of course it's nice. So it's. But it's this,
But that's where time management comes in. So we have to make sure that he's on time. It's a thin balance.
It's so interesting to see, though, how you guys are creating confidence in the race through the numbers that you're creating in the lab. And this is such a big part of the whole mental game as well, which we even haven't mentioned yet up until this point. Maybe you can, give me the transition here to dig a little bit deeper into the whole mental side, because obviously 8-hour race, let's pick the Ironman example again, is a huge thing to do. And I can't imagine that you just have all the numbers available at any tough moment on the track, really. How big is the mental part that goes into the whole training and into the whole race?
I think it's crucial. Like, first of all, you have to have believe. Like, if you feel confident in yourself, it's easier to be. Or if you feel the numbers that you're having and what like you can almost touch what you have to do on race day, then it feels more familiar in order to know what you have to do. Also I'm like training with Gustav Eden, who is one of the best triathletes in the world, and when we're doing then intensive sessions, then it's almost like we can feel what's required on race day in order to be up in the front. So then we can also like use each other in order to get more confident, in order to be feeling that we are back on track in order to perform on race day.
I think like what's a little bit again with this engineering approach, I think that everything can be modeled. So like if there's a big discrepancy between what you predict, or let's say that when you do measurements and other things, that there's a big discrepancy between between, let's say, your predictions and the outcome of it, then this is a sign of, let's say, a poor model, or let's say an incomplete model is maybe more correct to say. And of course, this is the value, of course, when you collect a lot of data, not only in a single spot, but you measure it also over time, not only in a lab, but also we do a lot of measurements in the field as well. And you're able to combine it also together with context or conversations that we have as well. Like, because we have to be aware that there are a lot of things we can measure, but there are even more things we still can't measure. So one have to account for, let's say, these kind of things there. But how I like to use data mostly is that data can act as a really good positive reinforcement loop. Because if you have data, because I think that, like, for myself, I can say, and of course I can speak for Kristian, but I think, for myself, I can say that there are many times I ask myself, am I doing good enough? Am I really doing good enough? And I think that having a confirmation back that we are doing good, that is important. And when you're using data in a good way, so when you have a good model, and you feel that, okay, this seems like a good performance, and you have data that is even reinforcing this is a really strong psychological combo of building confidence and everything. So it's not becomes a superficial confidence where you think, oh yeah, I'm doing a good run, I think, I'm so good. But you actually also get hard facts that supports the same thing as well. That is where data can be really used to superpower or supercharge the mental aspect of it as well.
But the difficult part is when you're doing measurements and you know you've done measurements in the past and you know where you're supposed to be, and if the feedback isn't positive, then it can be more tricky as well. Like, how do you deal with your, like, the mental stress then? Because then you often have to also change the approach for race day and maybe adjust the tactic as well. So if you know that your capacity isn't the same as it used to be, then you also have to be more reserved, or like holding back in the race, and then maybe hoping for that the race is going to pan out in a way where you can, for example, be hiding a little bit more, and then just at the end of the run go for it. So you can also adjust your tactic based on the feedback you're getting on testing leading into the race. But it can also be difficult mentally if you are struggling with seeing bad numbers and thinking that the race is ruined already.
So how do you deal with situations like these?
I try to always think the positive way. Like, this is numbers I have. I know I'm, as an example, like I'm in poor bike shape. Then of course I can't go to the front and push the pace. Then I have to do whatever I can. It's like playing poker, and I'm having weak cards on my hand. But then I know it. Then I know that I can still win if I'm sort of going my way through the race course. Versus if I have knowing that I'm in super solid shape and I can actually just go from the front. But of course, the downside by playing with weak cards is that you can be beaten by quite often. So you have like a few ways to win the race.
That is also one of the things that maybe just demonstrates a little bit the strength of Kristian as well. Because you can, of course, just go on race day, and you come there with an inflated view of what your capabilities are, and it's a crash and burn, because you go out with a strategy that you can't execute on, and then having that reality check and being able to build new strategies from that standpoint there, that is it is really tough to beat. I can't understand how you can beat an athlete that are capable of doing something like that. Because on the race day, the more information you have, but you are able to build it into exactly a positive strategy. Yeah, maybe you don't have the same room to play, but you are able to leverage that. That is like, how can you beat something like that? Surely, of course, it comes down to race day and somebody else has an extraordinary performance. But if you look then at the stability of what this athlete can bring out over time, it's hard to imagine anything more powerful than that.
Maybe both of you can share one word of Gustav, because obviously we're talking to the two of you today, but actually you two are three together with Gustav. everything that one of you does, you're doing with Gustav together. So what's that relationship like? I see you're pushing yourself. You're you're actually making each other better athletes and better a better team.
Yeah, I would say so. Like he's really making it easier to be on the road and to pursue our goals, because I get a lot of confidence as well to have someone like him around, because then I can always measure myself against some of the best triathletes in the world. And I think we are able to play on each other's strength. So it's not like we always go out there to smash each other, but we try to sort of use each other's strength to help each other to be better at our weaknesses. So it's not like a survival fest each training camp.
That's good.
Yeah. No, at the same time, of course, what's important for me to say, at the same time as I love this guy, I also love Gustav as well. That's important for me to say. These two guys means a lot to me. I remember several years back when we really started to spend a lot of time together. This was a couple of years before the Olympics, and I had to go home, obviously, because I spent a lot of time on camp, and at home I have a wife and 2 kids. And then basically I said to them that, guys, okay, I need to leave home now for a week to my family. And they say, what? We are your family. It's like, and they truly are. And I also, for me, it is really important for me to really care for have whatever you want to call a love or whatever for these guys as well, because it makes me want to bring out even more from myself also in this process. I need to care for the people that I work with, the whole team I have around me with people, even though you sometimes have to be very clear or direct in the direction that things have to go. I always feel on that, okay, we're a little bit too direct now, like you are aware of the people around you, because I really care about how they feel. Because that's what I think is important also for long-term performance of people. You can maybe extract more from people in a short term by being very, let's say, harsh or direct or whatever. But I think that is a short-lived strategy. Like, to have people really flourish and perform over time, you have to create, I believe, personally at least, that you have to create an environment where people feel that they can flourish or perform and so on. But sometimes you have to be very clear also on direction. But no, what my most important task is that I shouldn't. For me, I have to be convinced that on race day, I shouldn't know who wins of Kristian and Gustav. Then I know that I have done my job properly. Because for me, it would be at the time I start to feel that I would favor one athlete over the other athlete, then I also have to be very clear on that is happening, because that would also mean that I should find another coach for that athlete that equally much believe in that guy that he can beat, together with that athlete, me and the athlete I am working with. So in the case, for example, if I were working with Gustav, for example, and I started to believe more in him, and I started to lose a little bit confidence in Kristian, it would be very important for me exactly that to be honest with Kristian, say that we should really find a coach that believes that he, together with you, can beat me and Gustav, or vice versa. But that's the thing that I feel that we are very good at. We are really good at keeping a good balance, a good group, and these kind of things. And Gustav, of course, at the moment he is in a rehabilitation phase for his Achilles, and he had a worst year on records when it comes to everything that happened as well around him. But I really feel it is something. It is not it's not a normal like the traditional coach-athlete relationship that you see on TV or these kind of things. It is a team in its best sense. Yeah, I would say a good one, a really good one.
And guys, I could keep speaking to you guys forever. This is so much fun, but let me break it down to 2 more questions. I really feel like we should slowly come to an end. One more for you, Olav. Listening to you, approaching your job, approaching this purpose of just, creating better numbers, better performance. You really have this creative approach, it feels. And looking at those YouTube videos, you have all these gadgets that nobody has seen before, or I haven't seen before. What would you say are innovations that you still have up your sleeve that you will work with in the future or in the presence to make your guys even better?
It is actually important to say that several of the projects or innovations that we have developed is actually also things that Gustav and Kristian even have brought up, like ideas that they have come with, like needs that they have identified, and asked, like, is this something we could spend a little bit of time on? And then at the same time also, I think like what you see very often in media, what gets let's say the attention in podcasts or whatever, are obviously, let's say, very often the successes or the things that are happening there. But I think also what is maybe more important to remember, that to get there, and especially the closer you get to the top, it's a continuous game of being willing to turn every stone that you find, with actually, statistically speaking, not finding anything behind there at all. But that's not a failure, it's a learning, because for every rock you move or the stone you move, there's one less rock to move before you eventually come to a new ID. And this is of course obviously a return on diminishing return on investment, where you have to invest into finding more, let's say, looking behind more and more rocks to find those things. But that is exactly also what really makes it so much more powerful, when you are not only one person, but you are a whole team, some very unique athletes that also discover things and have ideas and needs that we should look into. So currently, it's we are very much focused on understanding better, let's say, again, physics, let's say, behind this, because that's the really cool thing about it. And that is that we can talk about as much as we want about physiology or psychology or all these kind of things, but ultimately it has to accumulate into performance. And it's important for me to say that data is not the love for data, but it's more the power of data, I would say. So my love for data has only to do with that. As long as I see that the data is really helping a systematic and more powerful approach to what we do, then data has a purpose. Other than that, I would just say, like, leave data away and you will probably be even better off. Like my input to most coaches would be, like, start with a couple of very, very basic things, and you can even innovate in those even basic things that you find there. I could probably give you one example from a very known technology and even break it down, and you would like, what is it possible to use it that way? Yes. And it provides so tangible and good value. So I would say that what innovations to come,
he's been working on a way to measure the amount of calories, the difference between the calories I'm eating and the calories that comes out. So both burning. So every time I eat something, he wants to make like the same plates. So he had like exactly the same amount of food, I think, and then measure the difference in my poo afterwards. So he wants to find a way to collect it, but it's probably not going to happen before the games, but maybe after. He still thinks that if we do it like in June, we can implement it in training in July, which I have told him, no, it's going to be way too late and way too close to the game to try to change the diet. But that's like your biggest sort of, I don't know, next step, next stone, or if you want to call it a stone, it's something else. But if you want to,
yeah, I'm not sure if I would call that as much as of an innovation project, but it's definitely a product we have in a pilot stage now, and then basically, of course, now implementing it with Kristian and Gustav. But the idea there is exactly like you can imagine a car, for example. What matters in the end is basically how far or basically how quickly can you travel from A to B before you basically run out of fuel there, of that car there. And then of course it goes into all the optimization of the car itself, from aerodynamics to thermodynamics, everything that goes into the car there to get it there. But ultimately also you can say that, well, if you can optimize or improve the fuel that goes into the car, you might be able to race even faster, for example. That's why in many sports, motorsports, for example, you are not allowed to play around with the fuel. The fuel is basically is one supplier of it, and everybody has to use the exact same fuel, because we know how powerful fuel is. So here you can imagine that a human being, we are organic creatures. So it's not necessarily only about that day of fueling, but it's actually also how you fuel over time. So when we talk about consistency in training, that also comes down to consistency in fueling as well, or nutrition. And fueling in nutrition, we can imagine that, like, just to put it a little or simplified, if you eat one food, some of coming to the plates that Kristian was describing there, like the brute force or the gold standard way to really know when you go, like some people have food allergies and this kind of, you go to the doctor and you do some sampling to figure out whether you have some allergies there. Like for me, the gold standard approach to this is basically where you take different plates over several days. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, post meals, and you look at it not only like one specific one, but you basically just look at the normal food that he's eating. So if he is putting this much chicken on the plate, he's putting this much vegetables, this much whatever on the plate there, and drink this kind of food, I need an identical copy of that one that I put into then a bomb calorie meter. So basically what happens in the bomb calorie meter is that I can measure how much calories that are available in this one now, and then afterwards I have to collect all, not a fecal sample, but all his feces. So whether he wakes up in the night with the diarrhea, he would have to knock on the door and say, Olav, you need to collect this now. Or he was out cycling, I would need to collect it. It doesn't matter. Everything has to go into this that I have to collect this. And then you add some traces to the food as well. So you can also identify what is what when it comes out as shit in the end, or feces, and then basically you can see how much calories are left in this. And here the idea is exactly that when you get foods that are really good for you, you have a microbiome in the body that are capable of extracting more of the calories from that food, to compare to other foods where you react more badly to, and let's say more of the, like you almost get a diarrhea from it, and it comes to simply because you're reacting to it, worst case. So this is something obviously you can't do like one sample. You always have to do it over a little bit of a time span to be able to collect enough samples. And this will also be influenced by a couple of different things, like even the training. But you can imagine here we are building then the super plate for Kristian, that these are the foods that like we really see that here we see also down the road that you're getting into consistency in training. So but that's not an innovation project, that's more like something we've had in the works for some time, and it's now in a pilot stage, and I, of course, thought that this would have an impact on Kristian much sooner, but then I see that he starts to freak out a little bit. I'm going to collect all the pieces from him before the Olympics. I say, okay, fine. I'm not going to stress him with that. I'll leave him with that. But then after the Olympics, this is when I'm coming from him.
It's not that I'm stressed about it. It's more like I have to make sure that the schedule is right. Like, I don't see the realistic to do this testing 6 weeks out from the games and then do analyzing it and then change or do learnings based on it 3 weeks before. Like it's a bit late, so then we have to think about the pre-LA to utilize this testing.
Or we figure out actually that maybe your favorite cookie is actually one thing that you shouldn't be eating. Like that would be a really damaging message to get. Like, Kristian, enough of this cookie now before the Olympics.
But hey, this actually leads me to my very last question for the day. I promise we're gonna be done then, because I actually wanted to ask you, Kristian, how you wind down with all of this data collection. This was actually the perfect example of how close you guys are working with the data and together, and even in your private life, right? This is a very intimate kind of study that you're doing there. And I can imagine that you have to wind down at some point to step back from all this work. I even saw you guys relaxing at some point with this mask that you use to analyze your breath or something, like how heavily you're breathing. How do you get the distance you need in order to go out when it counts?
So even when we're resting, he sometimes comes with a mask. But that's not to just measure that's to measure the amount of calories we're burning while resting. So he can know if we're rested so much, then this is the amount of calories we burned. So then we can actually train a bit more. But the way I disconnect, I would say, is with either training, just like by myself, or like going back to like just simple training. Because that's something I feel like if you're having a lot of people around you and you're doing like testing in the lab and you have 6-7 people around, just to go out then for a run just for myself and sort of get this meditation is good, or listening to a podcast or music and just laying in bed. So it's more like just disconnecting from the testing itself, and then you are cracking the numbers.
I think it's important to add a small or an important note to that. And that also is that Kristian is also very unique in that sense that he is capable of dealing with a lot of this and even finding like it doesn't stresses him at all. Other people that I work with, you can't do this at all. So you have always to evaluate the people that you are working with. And for some people, it is so basic that you deal with just the basic instruments that they're used to, and you don't introduce anything more, simply because you see that the relationship or you see the situation or the people they're dealing with, they are not mature or there yet that you can do it. So it's also, you have to evaluate the people, but this is where Kristian is extremely unique also in that aspect over all these years.
But it's about even disconnecting in the breaks we're doing. So like we were up here and doing testing on the track on the bike with a special bike and testing the aerodynamic on the suit and doing like different changes. So I was riding for 10 minutes and maybe having a break for 5 minutes where they were modifying my suit. And then for me to be able to sort of almost, even though I have 3 or 4 people around me doing sort of adjustments on the suit and putting these stuffs on, I'm trying to sort of just block them out and just sort of almost be by myself while I am with the people.
And that's a super skill.
That is definitely a super skill, and I'm so happy that you did not block us out today, but really opened up and shared everything. This was such an entertaining, fun hour. I appreciate this so much. This was so interesting and very exciting to listen to. Guys, thank you. All the best for the big tournament, for the big race coming up this year. We're definitely going to cross our fingers for you and going to have an eye on you. Take care and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was so much fun spending time with Kristian and Olav, and I don't know about you guys, but it feels like my brain is a little bit on fire. This was such an interesting insight into the coach-athlete relationship and their unique approach to basically everything. And I can't wait to sit down again with Jörg on Thursday to see what we can learn from this conversation and how we can apply Olav's and Kristian's mindset to our lives. The frequent listeners already know how I usually encourage you guys at the end of this podcast to reach out to us and share your stories with us because we really want to hear them. And some of you have done just that. Morgan, for example, messaged me to share how he loved the episode with Sia Kulisi. He said, exceptionally insightful, anyone can and perhaps should learn from Mr. Kulisi's perspective. And I definitely agree, Morgan. Charlie messaged about the Xavi Simons and Dr. Peter Schneider episode to say, the maturity of Xavi for a 20-year-old is crazy. He'll be one of the best in the game in a few years. Thank you so much for these messages, Morgan and Charlie, and you guys can do the same. You can either leave a review or comment on whatever platform you're listening to, or shoot us an email on mindsetwin@redbull.com. Also, make sure to hit follow or subscribe, and please check out the full video on our brand new Mindset Win YouTube channel. This was it. See you back on Thursday.